Welcome to One Broken Mom, a podcast dedicated to raising awareness of mental health, parenting, and self-improvement. I am the host, Ameé Coney. One Broken Mom is not a family show. It is meant for adults and contains sometimes adult language. The topics I cover can be serious and unsettling to people. However, I do have a sense of humor laced with a little bit of a punk rock attitude. So if you're interested in real talks about real stuff by real people so that we can all get better together, well, then you're in the right place, and so welcome. Okay, everyone, welcome back to One Broken Mom. About a month ago, I shared a video on my Facebook page called Stand Inside the Circle, showing this white woman in a prison yard, revealing to the viewers and to the prisoners themselves this overarching and painful connection between their experiences and their abusive and neglectful childhoods. Obviously, this is my passion, and so I can't watch a video like that without ugly crying, and some of you out there said the same. And so doing what I do, I reached out to the woman that I saw in this video so that I could do my part to help share with as many people as possible her passion and purpose. And when she said yes, I was just completely stoked. So I've been looking forward to this all morning long, a little bit jazzed up about this. And so today I have with me Fritzi Horstman. She is the founder and executive director of Compassion Prison Project. She's a Grammy-award-winning producer for her work on the Defiant Ones, which is pretty rad, and has been a producer and post-producer on dozens of television documentaries, shows, and has directed several films on her own. So welcome to the show today, Fritzi.
Thank you so much. This is so exciting. I'm so happy to talk about my passion.
Oh, yeah. And it you know, kind of going down a pathway like this, these aren't easy paths to take. And so when somebody decides to venture into something as challenging and as daunting as what you're doing here, I have just nothing but 100% respect for it, and feel like if there's a way that I can help, that's what I want to be able to do here. So how is it that you arrived through your career in film and television production to this cause and to doing this?
In September 2018, I was invited to a prison through Hustle 2.0, which is Cat Hoax, amazing organization. I walked in those prison doors, and the minute I arrived, I didn't see the worst of the worst. I saw myself and my trauma and those men and their trauma. And I actually said in front of everybody, I said, this isn't a prison, this is a trauma center. And what I realized in that day is what we're doing is radically, it's like opposite than what we need to do. And I said, so when are we coming back? I'm in, we're going to change this thing. And they said, oh yeah, we're coming back in 6 months. And that was just unacceptable to me. And so I was like, okay, I got to do something. And so I went home, I researched kindness. I listened to 100 podcasts, compassion, self-love. And January 5th, 2019, I walked into Kern Valley State Prison with 2 other volunteers, my friend Arthur and Jenny, and we just winged it. We meditated. I said, I love you to the guys. I said, I'm traumatized. I've been traumatized, and let's change this paradigm. And then, so the class, the second class, they changed half the guys. So all my prep for the next class was completely different. It was like, wait, these guys don't know that I'm traumatized. And that's typical of prison. They don't really care about the men. I mean, in the past anyway, I think things are starting to shift in the California system, but my experience was that they don't care. They don't care what they're doing. They have the cards, and they'll play them the way they want to. And so this was watching how the prison works and how the men have to, deal with this. And so, it was a big mess. Anyway, I walked in there, and, a year later, I always knew I had to make a film. We figured out the trauma circle in class. We did it 4 times. But I couldn't even film at that prison because their restriction, it's a maximum level 4 high security prison. And they wanted to allow me to have 4 filmmakers. So that would be me, a cameraman. It was ridiculous. The crew we have for Step Inside the Circle, we had 23 crew members. So, but that's Lancaster, and that was an honor yard basically that we filmed on, where the men get programs in exchange for agreeing not to do any shenanigans, no gang activity, no phones, just no shenanigans, no stabbings, just walk your course. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. So, I mean, and it's kind of like, those flashbulb startling moments, right? And I've mentioned this before, people searching for purpose. It's elusive. And I've used, I'm a mother, I've got two teenagers, and the only thing I found analogous to describing this to anybody is, when you're pregnant the first time and your midwife or your doula or your doctor or anybody's telling you, you're like, how do I know I'll go into labor? And they're like, you'll know, trust me, you'll know. And you're like, yeah, but is this it? And is this it? And, purpose searching feels like that up until the moment, right? And you're just like, yes, this is labor. Yes, I understand this. Like, yes, there's no doubt in my mind. I don't even have to question it, right? So, and it happens like that. Like, you don't plan it, you don't plot it. Sometimes you just walk in and there it is. And so, I mean, it's not like you had a structure going into this. It was just that moment, right?
Exactly. And the purpose gets reinforced, I think, as you go along, because I was making it up as I was going along, but then I was like, oh, wait, something's working here. And I think what happens is when you get filled up, inadvertently filled up, you just know you have to do something, but you don't know why, and you don't know what it's going to be. Like the first couple of times I went to prison, I was like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. This is exhausting. I had to take 2 days just to recover. But then suddenly the momentum happened. There were more volunteers. We started having 10, 12, 14 people wanting to come. People were booking in advance. And so that was affirming. And then, one day it just was like, that's it. This is what I'm doing. I'm going to quit my job, which I did in July of 2019. I said, I'm not going back to film. This is it. I'm in 100%. And then, as you watch the bank account go down and down and down, and my husband's like, well, you're part of this financial system that we have. And it's like, no, it goes down and down. And then, by the way, we're going to make a film and we don't have any financing. And so the rest of our savings is going to pay for insurance and trucks. And he's like, okay. And he's like, really? Do we have to pay insurance? I'm like, we can't get into prison unless there's insurance. And so it was that blind trust, which, I can't explain it, but I knew this was what I had to do. And I had to make that film. And I don't know if you know, but Rodrigo Prieto was one of the cinematographers on the film. And he was Martin Scorsese's cinematographer for The Irishman. So when he says, I'm going to be involved, that's what you're doing. And I need 23 crew members. And they need to be paid. It's like the obstacles were constant and nonstop. And it was like, I just had to say, yes, we'll figure it out. I made them take deferred, like we paid half. And it was so great. We got some donations and I could pay all the crew members. And today I just paid the insurance company back. But yeah, it was the leap of faith for me and my family was like off the charts for us. And, I got to say, it was a magical, it was like the best thing I could ever imagine. And, but to trust the universe, to trust yourself, to trust your instincts, I've never done it like that. I've always lived in fear. And, living in love is the paradigm we're heading towards. So, what does that mean, I guess, to your listeners or to the people watching this? What does living in love mean to you? Because that's where the magic happens. At least for me, it's been magical ever since I walked into those prison gates with those 23 guys. They counted, it was like 11 pages of equipment down to like a bolt. We had to count every bolt walking in there. It took 3 hours just to get into the prison yard. But we did it. I mean, I thought we were going to film for 10 hours. We got 5, but that's what we got. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So magic.
Yeah. And I'm getting goosebumps because I do know that, like I said, and you're right. Like, it's just, I'm going to nod because I know what you mean, where you just kind of, you're going forward and you're like, I don't know how I'm going to make it, but I know I'm going to make it. I know it's going to happen. And you're right. The hurdles become obstacles that then just when you need it, the door opens, the call comes in, the sale comes in, the donation. I mean, everything just kind of goes, da, 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 da. And, many years ago, my own kind of like perspective started to really change, was that when you're in the flow, you flow. It doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean there isn't whitewater, carrying you around, or you're not bumping off a few things, but you keep moving. I actually pulled a quote. You don't know this, but on Facebook this morning, I posted that I was going to be talking to you and I was really excited, and actually pulled a Jimmy Ivan quote out of your Defiant Ones documentary, which was use fear as a tailwind, not as a headwind. And so that's exactly what we're talking about here, right? Is when you can actually, charge into something that is powerful and meaningful. And to some extent, your fear dissipates a little bit. It doesn't go away. It's there, but yet the inspiration of what you're going to do, it just starts to outweigh the fear. It makes it like worth kind of challenging yourself and moving in and moving forward. So interesting.
Thank you so much for using that quote. It kind of brings tears to my eyes because, I would hear that quote almost on a daily basis as we were making the film. And I never really understood what he meant until, like, I get it now, but yes, Jimmy, fear is kind of evaporating because, love really, and that's what Jimmy was doing. He was just loving what he did. And I think, a lot of us think we have to follow the money trail. We have to, with security, the whole notion of security is such a fear-based thinking, like insurance, that's such a fear-based mentality. And so, I just thank you for bringing that quote back to me. It's like wow, what an epiphany for today. Mm-hmm. So thank you.
Oh yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Like I said, at the beginning of this, I mean this, I, admire and respect you for what you were, what you've been doing in this whole work, because it isn't an easy thing to do. For example, like, how do you, as a white woman, walk into a prison yard and get them to trust you to be vulnerable? Because that's what that is. And I think that's why people connected with the video that we've shared, and will connect with the documentary, is that, these aren't faces we're used to seeing being vulnerable about their abuses that they had. It's hard, you don't look into the faces of these men, and you don't see very easily, at least most people don't. I think you and I can see this. I can see the children that they were. I know that that's how you probably connected with them. Not a lot of people do, right? And so how do you go in and gain trust with these men to get them to, like I said, be vulnerable, and to be vulnerable in public for everybody else to see? Because that's fearful. That's scary.
Well, for me, I think because I was traumatized, and I didn't judge. I don't judge the men in prison or the women in prison. I don't judge them because we're all in this together. I mean, that's the piece that I think we're all forgetting is, we're putting the dark parts of ourselves in prison, and we're shutting the door and saying, the prisons are way outside of cities. They're hard to get to. So it's like, it's even hard to get to our dark side. But I think they see in me somebody that has no judgment for them, that, and I see my own criminality, my own, ventures into criminality, which criminal thinking is really it's kind of intelligent. It's street smarts is basically what it is. And I was a street kid walking the streets of New York City as a teenager, just seeing how everything went, and, the guy behind the counter, hey, lady, what do you want? And I'd say, I don't know. What do you got? But that's street smarts, and that's rapport. And it's also like, it didn't, when you're in New York City, you see every race, every level of income, and you're kind of all in it together. And a lot of cities don't have that. There's more segregation, like Los Angeles is pretty segregated, but in New York, everyone's in your face. So there is a street smarts that I think I bring to prison. And I think they see that when people see that you're seen, mm-hmm. All the doors open, the doors of love and the doors of possibility are open. And that's these men and these women have never been seen as divine, as miraculous, as talented, as possibility. And I was on a Zoom call with a bunch of incarcerated people from New Mexico yesterday, and I was so excited to see them, because it's like a different energy, because they're raw and they're ready for love. Their doors are open, and it's a real opportunity for all of us to love them, and in doing so we love ourselves. It's the algorithm is clear. It's been taught to us by Jesus and every other religion, and do unto others as you would have do unto yourself. That's what that means, is love unconditionally, and unconditional love come back. It's not do unto others, it's love unto others. And so that was one of the things I learned in researching, is the golden rule is in all religions. And so they get it, except we forgot. So, and what we're doing unto others right now is, and this is in politics, this is in our prison system. We're creating others. We're saying you're different than me, and therefore you need to be treated differently. And this is actually kind of, this is where the problem is, because there is no difference. We all came in as divine. We all have messages, and we all have information for our own evolution and transcendence. So
yeah, I know listening to, I fully get that. And then I know you also know this as well, that there are people that have a hard time understanding that, right? That they, meaning that it's hard to overlook the crime, right? There's so much loss in the crime, whether the crime is stealing, being abusive, murder, all of that stuff. Some people can't get past that because, again, it's counter to humanity, some of those things, right? Like we just talked about, what is our base nature? Like, one of the gentlemen actually says, like, we weren't born into this world to be criminals. And that's absolutely 100% true. So then people always want to question and judge why somebody will take actions that is counter to humanity. And of course we know, there's some experiences, but not everybody does that. And so when some people choose not to do that, or we call it a choice, right? But maybe it's not always a choice. It's a choice with whatever information we have and whatever we've got programmed into ourselves. But it's hard for people to look onto somebody else, feel like they have some similar experiences, and go, yeah, but I never did that. And I have 3 other siblings that have been in and out of jail, all of them, over and over, for a variety of issues. I've never been, like, I've had 2 speeding tickets. Like, so, it would be easy for me to judge them. Like, we had the same house, we had the same life. Like, why didn't, so when you run in and you have this beautiful message, which I completely agree, what happens, and what do you do when you run into somebody that's just like, yeah, but they deserve to be in prison because they killed somebody? Like, how can I forgive that? How can I forget that they did that, that they made that choice?
That's so many things to unpack there. So yes, choice is an interesting question when you're an interesting word when you're traumatized, because the brain completely changes when you're traumatized. You've heard of fight or flight, but what happens is the prefrontal cortex, the good decision making system in your brain shuts down, and the amygdala, the fear center, gets huge. And then you add brain damage, or like brain trauma, which 97% of the men that I've asked all have had their head bashed. Mm-hmm. So you have, like, ask a football player if he can make good decisions after he's been playing for 30 years. So you've got a brain that is not, and you add normalization of violence from child abuse. You've got a brain that is telling the body, we're going to be safe. Whatever it takes to be safe, we're going to do it. And if it means we have to fight, if we have to kill. So the question of free will really starts emerging from this discussion. And it's not just free will, but it's also, you put a traumatized brain in a triggering situation, it's going to keep itself safe. And that means probably if you've had the amount of abuse that these men have endured, which is unconscionable, and these women, but the men in the film, unconscionable some of these stories, you're going to kill. And so we know about the brain, and then we also know these men have never, and women have never been seen as being anything but a piece of shit. And that's, so when that is the information you've been told, and then it's reinforced by beatings and language that is just like, they're like, some people are told, I wish you were never been born. My mother told me that actually as well. I wish you've never been born. So what is a 3-year-old or a 7-year-old? How does that inform the rest of your life? But also, so for me, why I didn't commit more crimes than I did, which I was on my way to juvie for sure. Some people saw me. I went to a good school, and I had teachers who saw me, they said, look at that photograph you took, look at that. And they saw me as someone who could have some value in the world. And when I go into prison, I see the men and women as having some value in the world. And when you shift that dynamic, it's like being in a swarm of puppies. They're like, really? You see me as who I am? Really? And then suddenly they start imagining themselves as productive humans, and they want to forgive their parents, and they want to forgive themselves, and they want to start giving back to society. I think there are some sociopaths in prison, and they need to stay, but they don't need to be abused. And the men and women, every CO in that prison, in those prisons, know who can come out. They know who the good people are. They know who's, walking the line, and they know who needs some help. The information is all there. We know who and the assets in prison, those men and women have sat there for years. They know what it will take to heal their communities. And then to the victims, the harm is unconscionable. Again, it's more trauma in the world. And we need to find ways for the person who committed the crime and the person who has been affected by the crime to find a way to heal this, and that's why we do this thing called the Giving Back Project at Compassion Prison Project, where we build bridges back to the community, back to the victim, because the victim is being ignored in the way the criminal justice system works now. The victim stands on the side, and you're guilty, you get 20 years, but the victim is not. There has been no restoration. The victim goes home and has to deal with his trauma or her trauma or loss of a family member, whatever it is. There's no restoration. We need to sit in circles and work all this out and find the way that this victim is going to heal. And we need to work on this healing. It's, healing is done in communities. It's an old Native American tradition, and I don't know why we abandoned this, but these circles need to happen in every community. And I believe Congress and the states, I think Trump and the rest of the gang need to sit in circles and start working things out. Mm-hmm. I do. I think we all need to work things out. We all want the same thing. We all want a good family, education, a way to make money, and, live in abundance. And I don't know why they're two sides of the aisle, because it makes no sense. We all want the same thing. We just, the way we get there is being disputed, but, why? Why mm-hmm. are we creating all this division? Except for, we can destroy more land, or we can destroy more families. This is a call for America to really start getting together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so. I agree. Definitely. My master's degree is in environment and community. And so, for many years, the two sides of the kind of the aisle in terms of is environmental protection or not, right? It's like, but like you just said, we can all agree we want clean air and, clean water. Like that's a common. So let's start with what we know we all want, and then start to kind of figure out where we start to diverge on how we get to that point. And so, that always takes me back like 10 years when I was doing that with, contractors and builders and neighborhoods and, municipalities, and trying to get us all on the same page of deciding how we were going to design a plan, for a building or a development, to move forward and stuff. One of the things that watching the video that grips me about this entire topic is that when those of us that are privileged, and I'll use the word privileged, with an ability to do this kind of healing, this awareness, build up our own self-compassion, and then recognize that our own circles need to change, we can. We can decide that we're not going to hang out with these people. We can cut off family members. We can get rid of the toxicity around us, and we can start to craft a life that matches our new belief system, right? But fuck, these men can't, right? Like, they're in prison. They're surrounded by toxic people, other inmates, to prison staff and employees. And to me, it feels like I watch a man come to this awareness, and then I honestly can't help but cry for him, because I feel like you just found a new prison, right? You have all of this awareness and this whole sense of compassion, but now you're locked into this situation that now keeps you trapped with this whole level. And it just feels, to me, it honestly feels more cruel. And I wonder, like, are these men that go through these programs and these women that are going through these programs, are they safe? Are they safe from this, or is there more things that still have to happen and still have to change for them?
Yes, no, they're not safe. No, I mean, I get letters from the men I used to work with. I hope to work with them again soon. They don't feel safe right now. Kern Valley State Prison just had 2 murders in 2 weeks ago, and there's the way the prison system is geared, especially in the maximum securities. It's like the military. These COs are trained like they're the enemy is the prisoner, is the man, the incarcerated person. And so when you other like that in such, they were telling me, you're on our side, you're on the side of the staff, and so they're like, you gotta obey this division. And to me, I was just like, this is ridiculous. This is just old patterning. And you walk in there, and all the men, most of the CEOs, they're men, and they're armored up, their hearts are armored up, everything is just they're shut down. And I just try and like get in there. It's like, we love you. We Sam Harris, the guy who has this other podcast, he donated his mindfulness meditation app to all the COs and staff at California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. So like thousands of men and women have the ability to meditate. So, I mean, we're worried about them as well as of the staff and the COs. There's violence and there's suicides, so many suicides, and it's really painful because they all are suffering from PTSD, and they all probably have a lot of childhood trauma. One of the circles that I hope to film when we get back is a correctional officer circle, so we can start seeing their amount of childhood trauma, which I believe is the same, because violence attracts violence. If you're attracted to being a CO, the chances of you having violence in your life are pretty high. And same with being attracted to the military. It's a way for you to express the violence that's been normalized in your life. I got a letter from one of the guys, and he says, I didn't know violence wasn't normal. I thought this was what we all did. I mean, but that's context. He goes out into the street, people are fighting and hitting each other. That's what they're doing inside their homes. That's what was being done in my home. I thought violence was normal, and I thought being anxious and, kind of numbing myself was normal, but it's not. We weren't built this way. We weren't built to be like in like a toxic stress environment all day long. Your life expectancy goes down 20 years if you have more than 6 ACEs being adverse childhood experiences, which I hope all your listeners will take the ACE test and know what an ACE is. I think that's one of the awarenesses I really want to spread. What is an ACE? An ACE is an adverse childhood experience. There are questions from 1 to 10 created by Vince Folletti and Robert Anda and the Kaiser Permanente Foundation. It's the tool we use, and it's what the circle was based on. The step inside the circle, our compassion trauma circle, we use the ACE test, and then I've expanded the questions to include homelessness, foster care, juvenile justice, and head trauma. Like head trauma, Robert Sapolsky, he said in an interview, which kind of woke me up, he says, how many men on death row have had, brain trauma? how many men. And the men on death row, we've been doing some ACE tests with them. I've only gotten 2 responses, but both of them had a 10 of a possible 10. So the amount of trauma that the men on death row, now, so we're killing these men because of their trauma, basically, because when you're that traumatized, if you've ever seen Gabriel Fernandez, the trials of Gabriel Fernandez on Netflix, you will see the extent of, I highly recommend it, so you can really understand what kind of trauma the men and women in prison are dealing with. Gabriel died, but had he survived, not only would he have become a criminal, he would probably be on death row as well. So, because when you have that much violence in your life, it's the only thing you understand, and it's the only tool you have in your tool chest. So we need to replace these tools with love, compassion, self-esteem, creativity. Think of the world we could create when these tools are available to everybody instead of violence and dehumanization.
Mm-hmm. And, you mentioned it earlier, talking about how, these men and women are assets, when they have been able to grow and heal and understand, it is like a fog kind of lifting off of the brain, when you're just like, you have your own aha moments, right? And that the tremendous value it is when they can go in and do pretty much what you and I are doing, right? Which is, I came to this awareness. Now I need to, now I know that what I'm meant to do is to help other people. And I can't see not doing that ever again in my life. That there are men and women that can do the same thing, that can go right into the heart of these neighborhoods and these, their own situations, and begin to change them, from the inside out, which is, incredibly powerful. And to have a face that people recognize, right? Not have somebody coming in. I know one of the things that, like with my show in particular, that I hear from listeners is, they see a person rather than a doctor, right? Or a therapist, talking at them, and trying to, preach to them or, educate them in a way, but just another person on the same journey, kind of traveling along with them. They're like, yeah, I hear that. I hear your experiences. My experiences are similar. So now it connects to me. I'm going to listen to how you got 10 feet down the road that I want to come up and join you at. Right. And so these men and women can do the same, and that would be tremendous. And it seems unfortunate to not have that ability, or to lock them off from that possibility. So when in schools, we talk about having trauma-informed schools. So when children show up to school and they're dealing with childhood traumas at home and adversities, beatings, neglect, even emotional neglect, and they show up to a school with a staff around them that is not trauma-informed. I've seen this myself with my own children, and I've been frustrated. So my kids don't go to normal, like the regular schools, because the regular school systems, you can have one great teacher, you can have 3 terrible teachers, you can have a principal, you can have a punitive system set up that punishes them rather than understanding and seeing them, like we've said in this a few times. So do you tack through your project trauma-informed prisons and the prison systems there?
Well, I've actually gone to say wellness centers. So not only are people trauma-informed, everything is geared toward bringing the human that walks in there into wholeness. So it's creativity, it's circles all day long, circles, talking about therapists. It's a vision. It's basically a utopia for someone who's had trauma. The first question we ask is not what's wrong with you, it's what happened to you, right? That's the trauma-informed approach. Mm-hmm. And so not only that, you intake, if you've committed a crime, there is trauma behind it. That's full stop. So we know there's a problem if you're doing something violent to somebody else. One of my neighbors, his son is bullying my son, and I know there's something going on there. I'm just gonna let them work it out until I need to intervene. But there is some trauma in there. And my son has got some as well, because he was in my belly when I was traumatized. He's had that. He knows what that anxiety feeling, and I see him reacting. Trauma, not only trauma-informed wellness, like an umbrella of wholeness that, all Americans need this. It's not just the incarcerated population. We have to reevaluate basically all of our systems, the abuse we do to our food system, we're eating food that's been abused. And so that, and we know this, we go to McDonald's and we still know that there's a problem with what we're doing. So it's like the things that we're not really, coming to terms with as a society, that I hear there's all these pigs that are rotting, and, just like the sorrow I have that even they're, so it's these kinds of things that have to be unearthed. Our advertising system telling people they're not valuable, it's a constant message every day. All these women doing selfies, like spending hours just, doing a pose, and then everybody else thinking they have to live up to this. It's like, what messaging are we telling our beautiful people? We're beautiful in exactly every little cell you have is perfect. It doesn't matter. You're going to get old. You're going to have pimples. You're going to get fat. But there's no shame in any of it. And, we live in a very shame society, and, it's really a shame to be poor and to be homeless and to be, I saw a homeless man. He had a beautiful dog. He was a beautiful man. And I said, you know what? There is no shame. There's no shame being homeless. I know you're going to get your act together, but until then, enjoy being homeless. You don't have to have a job. I don't know. I know it was hard for him, but there is no shame. There's no shame in having served in Vietnam and not being able to deal with all the trauma that you're faced with. There is no shame being a woman, being transgender, being confused, whatever it is. It's like, let's give ourselves a break. Being an addict, like that's a big one. All the shame of being an alcoholic and being an addict. You know what? You're alive. Good. That's a start. And now, okay, so there's no shame in being an addict. You can make new choices. If you want to keep drinking, do it. It's fine. I get it. I mean, my sister, she drinks. She doesn't really want to heal. And there's no shame in that. I'm really fine with her journey, and I love her. And I just want to support her in whatever she wants to choose. So, we have to stop shaming our relatives for not knowing how to deal with their trauma. I mean, gosh. And when we stop shaming, doors start opening and awarenesses start opening, and we start seeing people for their glory, even though they're, inebriated or whatever it is that's going on, or if they've gained weight because they can't deal with the sexual abuse that happened when they were 6 years old. I mean, let's give our whole society a break. Mm-hmm. Let's have a no shame day where we can all just say, and then a no shame life where we can all say, we're good. And, there's some room for improvement, but fundamentally we're good. Mm-hmm. And,
yeah, that was one of the parts that you see in the video that seemed to connect with the men, that they all commented, or several of them had commented on it, that at the very end where you talk about there is no shame, and having them say it out loud, right? Because there's always something about, you saying there is no shame, but there's something about when we can actually say that out loud, because it takes on a whole nother sense of power coming out of our own mouths rather than this, yeah, I know, I hear you, right? I'm sure I agree, right? But it just kind of rolls right off of our heads and doesn't really connect until we express it and say it,
And just to, people are probably listening saying, well, wait, what if you've done something bad? Well, so back to it, there is no shame, but there's accountability. Mm-hmm. So we've done something wrong, and that's where we take responsibility for what we've done, and we figure out the way to make it better. We do it. And that's that, and all the people in prison, taking accountability and making amends, figuring out a way to make amends. And, maybe your victim is dead. Maybe you can't do it. Maybe the family doesn't even exist, but there's a community that's been impacted. There's someone in the world that you can pay it forward to. You can make amends. You know what that is. You know what that journey is. And if you lift the shame and say, okay, we're going to take shame off the table, and we're going to move forward and make a shift. Now, suddenly they're awake. And instead of in this fog of shame that we've been living under, they're like, okay, I can do something. I can, the guys the guys I'm working with, every single one wants to give back. They don't want to see the youth going into, they want to see them getting an education, creating community murals. They really want to, one guy wants to create a STEM course. Another guy wants to create a community center. Another guy wants to create a prison art co-op so we can give back to communities. So this is what's going on in the minds of the men that I've been working with. And I'm just giving you 3 examples. And then, in the honor yard that I work in, those guys are off the charts. You saw some dogs in there. Mm-hmm. Those dogs go to vets and other people with PTSD. One of the dogs, I saw a guy give his dog, they have to give up their dog. They've been training this dog for a year, and a little girl who was in one of these shootings, he gave his dog to this little girl. And I mean, the alchemy and the exchange in that moment, I still cry. Obviously, I'm still crying about it. That little girl has gotten healing from a man who did something really bad. Mm-hmm. And that exchange of love is forever healed, and is forever healed in both humans. And that's what we're capable of. And we're robbing ourselves of what's really possible, which is a world of love and forgiveness. What have we not forgiven? Obviously, we've got a debt of unforgiveness that's just stacked up high, because based on how we're treating each other, because the only way you can forgive someone else is if you've forgiven yourself. Mm-hmm. And we've not forgiven ourselves. And we've got a debt. We've got slavery. We've got abuse to Native Americans. We've got Jim Crow. We've got World War I, World War II. We've got the Civil War. We've got the 60s. We annihilated, the Black Panthers and all these groups that, there was violence involved, but there was also really a lot of good. Mm-hmm. And so we've got some major forgiveness to do for ourselves and to each other. And, we've got to start with ourselves. So today, everyone listening, say it out loud. There is no shame, and I forgive myself. Let's start there. And it can ripple out, because each person can change the world. I mean, you're changing the world, I'm changing the world, and everyone here. And that's what I tell to every guy, every man and woman in prison. You can transform the world, because it's that that Gandhi quote, be the change you want to see in the world, because it is true. If I've forgiven everybody and I've forgiven myself, I'm an open book. I don't see people as criminals, as other, because I've integrated that part of myself, and that I see them in me, whatever it is. I see the violence, but I also see the love. And it's all available to us. All the religions get it. It just gets perverted, and mm-hmm. and let's unpervert religions, and let's unpervert, the messages and the algorithms that have been handed down from generation to generation that we keep ignoring, or we keep, all men are created equal except for Blacks, Latinos, women, Asians. So basically all white men are created equal. Well, yeah. And we have slavery in our Constitution. In the 13th Amendment, it's okay to have slaves still. So, I mean, I don't know what that is, but if there's some people in the law who want to change that with me, let's go. There's a guy at Kern Valley State Prison who would like to change it as well, because it's perverse. Mm-hmm. There's some perversions in our society that really need to be examined, because when you take the word slavery out of the Constitution, you suddenly have seen the incarcerated as a human instead of as, an ox cart, a right. human ox cart.
Right. Now, I was going to say here that, we know people, can relate to these adversities, and some people don't end up in prison, and there are some people that do. What are the demographics that you're actually seeing, on your end with this, and these stories of traumas and stuff like that? And how do these, how do these relate to, what we see out there? I mean, is it disproportionate?
At the yard, I really don't know the demographics, but the yard where Step Inside the Circle, I would say 2/3 of the men were African American. There was maybe 3 white men, and the rest were Latino. So, and so I'm going to give you some of the stories that I heard from some of the guys. The first story I ever heard was from a guy named Deshaun, and he told me his father tried to drown him when he was 10 years old. And so so that messaging has informed the rest of his life. And when I saw this beautiful man, I couldn't, like, he had gone so deep into his own shame and, inability to be in the world. He's hard to access, but I know love will draw him out, and I'm dying to get back in touch with this man. There's 2 men in my classes. Deshaun had a 10 on his A score. I'm talking about the 10s mostly. Ronald, his mother tried to slit his throat when he was 6.
Oh my gosh.
And he's still trying to get in relationship with his mother, and he doesn't know how to forgive her. I mean, forgiveness is a really hard thing. It's a really hard thing. Yes, I can see. Yeah, I've cried for days with these men. And then Chris's father. He says he won't call him his father. The man who, inseminated my mother. That's what he calls him.
Mm-hmm.
The guy dropped one of those sparklet bottles, but the glass ones, over his mother's head, and he made Chris sleep in the bathtub because he wet his bed, and then the father would come in and urinate on him. So this is the kind of and so Chris was a heroin addict, and he has stopped using now. He has, after going through our class, it was a struggle because I'd see him, because when you're on heroin, you kind of recess, kind of like Deshaun. You recess into, I don't know, it's like you're inaccessible. It's like, where did you go? But he's stopped using. And there was actually 2 guys in my class who've stopped using because they have hope. And, hope is a better drug. Is not a drug. It's a better way of feeling. And I think hope that's what I want to spread. There's 2.3 million men and women in our prison system, and they need hope, because when you have hope, you lift the shame, and you start getting busy. And the stories like this are common. And what the circle does is it allows the men and women to see themselves in each other. And when you can see yourself in each other, there is no separation. Mm-hmm. And so, you see, but that's what the reality is. When you walk down the street, everyone you see is you. And this morning I saw a guy in a ramshackle truck. He was one of those gardeners, but I saw him and I smiled at him, and he smiled back. And we had such joy this morning. And that's what's available. Instead of seeing that other person as deformed, or the worst of the worst, that's a human. And give him the tools to love and to forgive himself. And you got a whole nother person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So let's talk about the Compassion Prison Project, and what it encompasses, and then because I know you're seeking donations. It's a not-for-profit organization.
Yes.
And so
yes,
let's talk
nonprofit.
about and so let's talk about what that is and how donations are used, so that anybody listening here, and I'll have links to everything in the podcast notes so people can get access back to be able to contribute to what you're doing. But let's tell everybody what you're doing.
So yeah, it's been so exciting. We've gotten some donations. Some of the donations will go towards finishing the film and hiring Rodrigo Prieto again, and getting it a beautiful film for us to really start seeing ourselves in these beautiful men and women. And another thing, our donations are going, we're starting to reach out to all the prisons in the United States. There are 1,833 prisons. We're starting with the prisons that we know we can get our program into. We want to get our program and the circle into all prisons. And we want childhood trauma awareness to be not only available to all prisons, but we really want to spread the message to the rest of the United States. I want all men and women to know what their ACE score is and to know the realities of what childhood trauma has done to every man and woman that has experienced it. Other things we're doing, the Giving Back Project, like that. So hopefully we'll be getting some artwork from the men at Kern Valley State Prison. And they wrote a book, so we're going to be publishing their book. We're going to be creating calendars and greeting cards so we can sell them, so they can use that money to start getting their communities back on track. We're also going to be painting murals in every prison, which with iconography from their, like if they're from Watts, they're going to paint the Watts Tower. If they're from Sacramento, I don't know, maybe the Capitol building, I don't know, whatever they feel like. But the idea is to have every prison have a mural of California, or if we're in Oregon, of Oregon, so that we start connecting back to our communities. And then the communities, they see, oh, look at that beautiful mural. Wait a second, who made that? Oh yeah, it's Joe. Joe he was in my school with me. Wait a second, how's Joe doing? Wait a second, I've got a job for Joe. So, and then Joe comes out and he wants to lead groups for teens. And then, I mean, look what just happened. We've got Joe with a job. Joe's functioning. He's worked on his trauma. He knows about trauma. He can see the trauma in all those kids, and those kids feel seen. And suddenly those kids are not going to prison. They're finishing school suddenly, and suddenly they're going to college. And suddenly we have a whole new community. We have leaders and people that believe in themselves. And when you believe in yourself, you believe in somebody else. Like I believe in myself, and I believe in the men and women in prison, and I believe in my volunteers and and I would start to pay for some of the volunteers. My God, they're incredible. And I need someone to be my CEO, or so that I don't have to do it, because I need to just keep talking, and I need to go into prisons, and I need someone to run all the organization. And we have 1 billion salaries that need to get paid. So that's where your donations will go. We'll be able to start paying people so that they show up every day instead of, Thursdays at 1:45.
Right.
And well, that's what's happening.
I get it. Yeah.
Literally 1:45. Yes, we need to pay all these people so that they can leave their jobs and work for our organization. And I need someone in each state who can reach out to all the prisons in that state. So it's like kind of grassroots, but we need to hire these people. There's Sean, he's in Tennessee, we're paying him a few dollars, but that's not enough for him to quit all of his jobs and be, the Tennessee guy.
Mm-hmm.
And, then there's red states that don't have any prison programs. And so we need to figure out ways to educate those red states and, start changing this, this old pattern of othering from the Civil War or from slavery, and really shifting that dynamic so that we can really start healing our society, because this is, what you do to others, you do to yourself. So mm-hmm. those people that are abusing these men and women are also abusing their families and their selves. So they're not whole. We have a system of violence. It's this whole society is built on violence and shame. Mm-hmm. And it's time that we really, we upgrade. We need to upgrade into love and compassion. I mean, that's who we are. We all know that fundamentally. We've had hundreds of people come and say they want to volunteer. We're still trying to sort that out, but hundreds of people. So what does that mean? And this is out of the 2 million people that have seen the video. Wait till 10 million people see the video. So please, listeners, please share the video, because once, I don't know if we can handle more volunteers today, but we're going to need all the volunteers, and we're going to need all, and more donations, because we're going to pay people. And, maybe we can pay you. I mean, who knows? But there's 50 states. So we need 50 team leaders in each state, and so on. And then the Giving Back Project, that needs a lot of donations, because we need to help supplement these ideas and the visions, so the men and women can see their ideas come into reality. Because when you see your vision manifest, you become a different person. You know that you can do things, and then so you start thinking, the vision starts getting bigger, and your sense of yourself gets bigger, and suddenly you've changed your community. And that's what's available to us, on a local level, on a national level. We can shift this dynamic, and it's not red and blue states. It's all of us. We're all in this together, and we all have the like the men and women in prison. We all have the information to shift this dynamic. It's a paradigm shift.
Indeed, it is. Yeah, it is. I know. Good for you. Fucking A. Right? So again, the links will be in the podcast notes. And for anybody that is actually interested, there is an email on the compassionprisonproject.org website to be able to send you, right? Like say, hey, I'm in, let me be your resource in whatever state that you live in. And so I encourage everybody to, bombard Fritzi with help and with money. That helps too. And it is really important to, to assign value, especially monetary value. Monetary value is an important part. We need it, and we have bills to pay. And I think that sometimes, it is important for people to understand that their skills and their expertise can actually earn them livings, that, and it's great to have purpose and a sense of endeavor, and also be able to pay your bills to be able to do that. And so it is, I don't want to definitely underplay what you just said. Like, all these wonderful people that are giving up so much right now to get something going do deserve some financial compensation. And that's kind of a weird thing, that a stigma, I would say, that exists sometimes in culture is, good things should be done for free for the sake of everybody else. Yeah, that's maybe like there's a purpose there. But again, as long as there's bills to pay and we have, and when we have a sense of financial autonomy and stability, we can then turn that back into capital, like literally capital that we can grow with. And we only have so much we can do donating our finite hours and resources, but we can actually exponentially grow the efforts of other people and stuff. And so, again, anybody that's listening here, organizations, sometimes companies do have matching donations. So if you actually work for one of those bigger companies, you might inquire as to whether or not you can do a match with this, with what you're doing. And, I want to go back to the topic of when we're hurting other people, we're hurting ourselves, because sometimes that's not sometimes it doesn't make a connection for people. They're like, well, no, I'm hurting that other person. I feel really good about my choice to do that. The point to think about for anybody that's listening is, when you believe that that's the right solution, you are inevitably doing similar things to people that you do care about, like subtly nuanced. Maybe in your, maybe in the way you talk, maybe in the way you feel about yourself. You might be shame talking yourself more than you actually realize it. And so that's kind of the essence behind that statement there, of like, when we keep expressing this negativity and hostility towards somebody, it really usually is because we have that sense of hostility inward towards ourselves. We have no outlet for it. We were shown that when you have low self-esteem or low self-confidence, that you punish other people for that, and you make them lower to your levels. And so just think about that if you're out there listening, wondering, like, why do I feel, like, here's the curious question, why do I feel that we have to keep punishing somebody who's committed a crime? Like, accountability, we've talked about that. There are victims. We've talked, there's no doubt about all of that. But if you can't make the leap in your thinking that there is a possibility for rehabilitation, that people can actually heal and grow, that they can actually become assets, why are you still hung up on the fact that that can't actually happen? Just ask yourself where you think that's actually coming from. And that would be my homework assignment for my listeners. And I will add the ACEs link back in. We do talk about ACEs on the show. And so I'll put it into this episode, since that's your call to action for everybody. So for anybody that hasn't taken the ACEs test, I'll have it there for you to be able to do, so you can get a sense of what your score is. I think that most of my listeners probably already know, you know, they're hearing about trauma. They've gone down that path, but if you haven't yet, by all means, definitely do it. So, Fritzi, this has been amazing. I get so excited about my own circle of people that I get to meet and talk to that have like this, similar passion, for doing this kind of work. So I was excited when you said yes. I'm thrilled to be sitting here and looking at you. I hope that very soon we can actually see each other in person, because I'll be heading down to Southern California quite a bit here in the upcoming months, as soon as it's legally allowed and safe and all that other stuff. So I would love to be able to touch base with you and meet you in person. And I appreciate your time today, to sit here and have this conversation with me.
Oh my God. Thank you so much. It was so great. And as always, I learn another thing. I learn more things just talking. So, it's so great. So, and you're such a wise, insightful woman. So I really appreciate your perspective and your vision and your community. Obviously, if they're attracted to you, they must be something else. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.